And there's some great food here that you're sharing with us. So, I mean, what is a bing? So people don't know what bing is. What's the bing?
Bing is a Chinese savory crepe wrap. It's China's oldest street food. It goes back to the Three Kingdoms period. They actually used to, there's a couple different stories of how it came to be, but it used to be before they had woks, they would cook the bings on their shields because it was a flat cooking surface. So that's kind of what I'm pretty positive, but there's a few different stories, but that's my favorite. And yeah.
You're sticking to it, right?
I'm sticking to it.
So why did you decide to do bings?
When I lived in China, going to school overseas, I ate the bing maybe 3 to 4 times a week. And all my classmates loved the bing. All my international and Chinese classmates all loved the bing. So I thought, why wouldn't people like it here? And yeah, so here we are.
That's amazing. Any questions also for her? She's like enjoying the food, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to enjoy this food. And I've had his food before, so I know it's delicious. I'm ready to dive in.
For people that don't know, did you know that Jackson actually speaks fluent Chinese?
Well, I learned that recently, so I wanted to know a little bit more about your experience there.
Yeah, I took HSK4. I did a Chinese language training program in Nanjing at Hehai University. And it was a pretty cool program. It was super easy to get into, and it kind of starts you out right at a beginner base. And I studied for a year, but I lived with kind of like a host family. I had some friends who I let stay at my house here in Eugene, and they went to U of O, and then I stayed in his house for 6 months of it. So I lived with his parents, so that was what helped my language increase. My language level increased pretty quickly, living without being able to speak to my host parents or whatnot.
We'll keep it real. Jackson knows how to pick the ladies. That's why he learned Chinese. So that's the only thing that's really happening, right? Jackson's fluent though. I know Jackson when he was like young. So Jackson, how did you go from being a young world-class Halo master to now being an entrepreneur? What drives that passion?
It's kind of always the opportunity, having an opportunity and taking advantage of it. It's kind of one thing that I've always learned is when something's right there in front of you, you have to go for it. Otherwise, it's going to haunt you one day. And so I had an opportunity. One of my friends my friend and my brother owned a food spot in Springfield, the Island Hut, years ago. And they closed it down, and they had an extra food cart, and they weren't using it. So I jumped on that opportunity, and then haven't looked back.
Yeah, knowing Jackson as long as I've known him, this guy is always looking for opportunity. If there's a way to make a buck, he's like on it. He's like the super entrepreneur. So I mean, it's amazing to watch you from a young little kid to growing up to a young man in a successful business now.
Selling pop cans out of my locker in my school.
Jackson's been all around.
So do you feel like this has been a good way to go with a food truck in town versus another option?
I think I like the idea of food trucks because it's such a low overhead. You're going to automatically eliminate a lot of that stress that larger restaurants and businesses have. You have so much overhead, more employees in order to operate. That's just so much more stress. And then for someone who's never started anything like that, I feel like food cart's a good way to at least get going, because if you can't master the food cart, I feel like a restaurant is going to be pretty tricky for anyone that couldn't make that even work. But